She disappeared one night. No trace, no goodbye. Then a few weeks later, her body was found buried in a barrel 10 feet underground. And this isn't a horror movie or a true crime Netflix special. This actually happened in Portlaoise, Ireland. Meet Aoife Phelan, 30 years old, from Ballyroan in County Laois. A nanny, a daughter, a sister. Everyone described her as kind, bubbly, hardworking, just one of those people you can't help but like. And then there's Robert Corbet, mid-20s, living not too far away in Sheffield Cross, Portlaoise. Quiet guy, bit of a loner, worked with machinery. The kind of person you'd say hello to at the shop, but not really think about again. Until one night, he became the center of one of Ireland's most disturbing murder cases. Alright, picture this. It's late October 2012. Portlaoise, a quiet Irish town where everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where gossip spreads faster than Wi-Fi and missing people just don't happen. But that week something did happen. Aoife Phelan, age 30, from Ballyroan, was supposed to head home after visiting a friend. She texted, said she'd be fine, maybe getting a lift, except she never showed up. Not that night, not the next morning, not ever again. Now, Aoife wasn't the type to just disappear. She had a close family, a good job as a nanny, and plans for the weekend. So when her phone went silent, her family instantly knew something was off. Within hours, panic hit. Calls, texts, messages, no answer. By the next day, search parties were out. Locals walking through fields, checking ditches, rivers, woods, anywhere she could have gone. And here's the creepy part: Portlaoise had this calm, polite atmosphere through it all. Like everyone wanted to believe Aoife was fine, that she'd turn up soon, laughing, embarrassed, maybe saying she just needed space. But days passed and nothing. Then the guards started asking questions. They checked her last calls, her messages, her social circle. And one name came up again and again: Robert Corbet. He was a 20-something guy she knew. Worked in machinery, ran a family business. He'd given Aoife lifts before. So naturally they asked him, "Did you see her that night?" And Robert, calm as a monk, said, "Yeah, I gave her a lift, dropped her off near her house." No hesitation, no sweat, just too calm. But here's where it gets weird. Friends started saying he'd been acting different, fidgety, nervous. He even told someone, "The guards will probably call me soon. I was one of the last to see her." Which, okay, fair enough, except most innocent people don't rehearse lines like that. Still, with no evidence and no trace of Aoife, the case stalled. Weeks went by. Her family didn't stop searching. They went on radio, on local news, begging for answers. But in Portlaoise, whispers started. People said maybe Aoife had gone to Dublin, maybe she'd left voluntarily. And that's the thing about small towns: when people can't handle the truth, they start inventing lies to fill the silence. What nobody knew yet was that the truth wasn't miles away. It was buried, literally. So let's rewind a few months before Aoife vanished. She meets Robert Corbet, not at a bar, not online, but through everyday life in Portlaoise. He was helping out with his family's business, a kind of small construction and haulage setup. She was friendly, talkative, and yeah, they hit it off. Now it wasn't exactly a romance story. More like one of those "it's complicated" situations. They'd meet, chat, spend time together, but Robert never really wanted to call it a relationship. He liked having control. She liked honesty. You can already see where this is going. At some point, Aoife told him she might be pregnant, and this is where the whole case takes a sharp left turn. Because instead of handling it like an adult, Robert panicked like a teenager who got caught sneaking out. According to texts later read in court, Aoife mentioned baby names. She talked about how they'd handle things. She even wanted to meet up to talk about it properly. And Robert, he told friends he was terrified, said this would ruin his life. He started dodging her, avoiding calls, pretending to be too busy. Which, by the way, always works great when someone might be carrying your child. Just ghost her, right? But here's where it gets really disturbing. When Aoife went missing, Robert used that supposed pregnancy as part of his story. He told the guards he had been under a lot of pressure, that they'd argued, that it was a moment of madness. But then the bombshell. At trial, state pathologist Marie Cassidy testified that Aoife was not pregnant, not even close, which meant Robert's entire defense, the stress, the panic, the so-called snap, was based on a lie. A lie that he had built months before her death. Now think about that. If he truly believed she was pregnant, he might have freaked out in the moment. But if he knew she wasn't, that means he planned that lie before the murder. It wasn't panic, it was preparation. So while the whole town was looking for Aoife, Robert Corbet was sitting in his home, pretending to be the helpful neighbor, spinning a story he thought would save him later. And honestly, that might be the most chilling part. Because sometimes monsters don't look like monsters. They look like the guy offering to help put up your missing person posters. So now we're in the final week of October 2012. Aoife still believes she's meeting Robert to talk things out, the whole pregnancy thing, their situation, maybe some closure. She trusted him. She really thought it would just be a chat. She drives over to his place on the night she disappears. It's quiet, dark, rural, one of those Irish country setups where houses sit far apart, just fields and machinery. He brings her into his shed, and that's where it all happens. According to Robert's own story, because yeah, he eventually confessed they argued. He claimed she came at him verbally, said things that made him lose control. He said he put his hands on her neck, that he strangled her, and when she went limp, he panicked. But that panic didn't last long, because what he did next wasn't some random emotional reaction. It was methodical. He got a plastic bag, then cable ties, and he used them to make sure she wasn't breathing. Then, instead of calling for help or even just facing what he'd done, he turned cold. He took a barrel, a large industrial drum, and stuffed her body inside. He sealed it up, cleaned the scene, and just moved on. That's not panic, that's planning. Here's the part that really gets you. That same night, he went to Dublin Airport to pick up a friend, acting completely normal. Imagine that. You've just killed someone. She's in a barrel in your shed, and you're like, sure, I'll head to Dublin, no bother. The next morning, he decided he needed to hide her for good. So he used machinery from his own yard to dig a pit. He rolled that sealed barrel in and covered it with gravel and soil. Then, get this, he asked other people to help fill it in, saying he was just doing some landscaping work. Yeah, landscaping. CCTV footage from the area later showed his van moving in and out of the property, a forklift shifting materials, and other signs of activity around the exact area where the body was eventually found. So while the community was out searching lakes and rivers, Aoife was literally buried in his backyard. It took almost 2 weeks before investigators got suspicious enough to search Corbet's property. And when they did, the truth finally surfaced 10 feet underground. A sealed metal barrel, inside the remains of Aoife Phelan. That moment changed everything. Because up until then, there was still a sliver of hope she might be alive somewhere. When the guards opened that barrel, hope turned into horror. And Robert Corbet, he didn't look like a killer. He looked like your neighbor. But under that calm surface, he had buried a human being like she was just another piece of rubbish he wanted to get rid of. So now the search is in full swing. Posters everywhere, locals whispering in cafes, families afraid to let their daughters walk home alone. And meanwhile, Robert Corbet is still walking around like nothing happened. When the guards first questioned him, he acted shocked that Aoife was missing. He told them the same story over and over, that he dropped her off safely that night, end of story. He even pretended to help, saying things like, I hope she turns up soon. But his calmness, that calmness started to bother people. The guards weren't buying the performance anymore. So they went back again and again, asking more questions. And eventually, his story started to crack. He gave multiple versions of what happened. At one point, he said Aoife got into his jeep, they argued, and he accidentally killed her. Another time, he said it happened in the shed. Then he claimed he panicked and dumped her body in a river. Yep, a river. He literally made up an entire fake location to throw them off. The guards searched the river anyway because that's what they do. They found nothing. But that lie told them something more valuable than evidence. It told them he knew exactly what he was hiding. Days later, they brought him in again. This time, Robert confessed, sort of. He said it was a moment of madness, that he didn't mean it, that Aoife pushed him too far. You know, the classic script every manipulative coward falls back on when they've been cornered. But when officers searched his property, all the pieces started falling together. The gravel pit, the heavy machinery, the new patches of soil that didn't quite match the rest of the yard. They dug slowly, carefully, and about 10 feet down, they found that metal barrel inside Aoife's remains. That was the turning point. Once the barrel was uncovered, all the sympathy in his story evaporated, because that wasn't panic, that was premeditation. The trial later revealed how detailed his cover-up was. He had cleaned up the scene, sealed the barrel, and even made plans to disguise the digging as regular construction work. He thought he could outsmart everyone. In court, his lawyers argued it wasn't murder, that it was provocation, that Aoife had said something that made him snap. But the prosecutors weren't having it. They called it what it was: calculated, cold, deliberate. And the jury agreed. After about 4.5 hours of deliberation, they came back with a majority guilty verdict, 10-2. The courtroom was silent. Aoife's family cried. Robert just sat there expressionless. And you know what's crazy? Even after that, he still appealed the sentence later, claiming the trial was unfair, as if the barrel buried in his backyard wasn't enough proof. So after months of hearings, witnesses, forensic reports, and a whole lot of lies finally collapsing, the day came, May 24th, 2014. The courtroom in Portlaoise was packed. Reporters, families, neighbors, everyone wanted to see the man who'd buried a woman in a barrel finally get what was coming. Robert Corbet was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Aoife Phelan. No suspense, no drama, just the word guilty hanging in the air. For Aoife's family, it wasn't closure, it was survival. They'd waited nearly 2 years for justice, and when it came, it didn't bring peace. It just confirmed the nightmare was real. Her mother later said in court that she could barely recognize her daughter when they recovered her body. Too many injuries, too much damage. Imagine that, not even being able to say goodbye properly. And all because of a man who didn't want to face the consequences of his own choices. Corbett didn't say much when the sentence was handed down. No apology, no emotion, just silence. Like he was more worried about himself than about what he'd done. He was taken away, serving his time in an Irish prison, but even behind bars, he still tried to fight it. He launched an appeal, claiming that the verdict was unsafe, that he'd been treated unfairly in court. You know, the usual excuses people use when reality hits them too late. But the evidence was ironclad: the barrel, the lies, the CCTV, the pathologist reports, everything pointed straight back to him. For the town of Portlaoise, though, life didn't just go back to normal. People still talk about it, because it wasn't just another crime. It was a betrayal, a reminder that evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it looks like the neighbor who smiles and waves at you on the road. And here's the part that's hard to forget. Even after his conviction, people around Portlaoise said there were whispers, quiet questions nobody wanted to ask out loud. Did anyone else know? Did someone help move the barrel? Was it really just him? Those questions never got full answers. And maybe that's the thing about stories like this: justice comes, but it never feels finished. There's always something left hanging in the air. Here's the thing that sticks with you. Robert Corbett wasn't some violent career criminal. He wasn't drunk or high or having some mental breakdown. He was calm, controlled. He lied smoothly, planned carefully. He knew exactly what he was doing every step of the way. He strangled a woman, hid her body in a barrel, and went to pick up a friend at the airport right after, like it was just another day. That's not a snap. That's not panic. That's evil with a schedule. And then when the whole thing came crashing down, he used the oldest trick in the book, the "it was an accident" defense. But you can't accidentally dig a 10-foot hole and bury a sealed barrel. You can't accidentally lie to investigators for weeks. You can't accidentally fake an entire pregnancy story to make yourself look less like a monster. Here's where the irony hits hardest. He built that pregnancy lie as his safety net. He told himself, if it all goes wrong, I'll just say I panicked because she was pregnant. That lie was supposed to save him. Instead, it destroyed him. Because when the truth came out, when the pathologist said Aoife was never pregnant, his entire web collapsed. And what's worse, Aoife's life ended because she trusted him. She trusted someone who looked normal, someone she thought cared. In a small Irish town where everyone knows everyone, she couldn't have known that the man she met would be the one to bury her. The case is closed now. He's in prison. But people in Portlaoise still remember. They pass by that area and they think about the search parties, the posters, the hope, all of it crushed by one man's cowardice. Aoife's name lives on though, not because of how she died, but because of how people refuse to forget her. Her story reminds us sometimes evil doesn't come with a warning. Sometimes it's polite. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it offers you a lift home. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Stories like this are heavy, but they matter. Let me know in the comments, do you think justice was served, or do cases like this ever really close? Hit subscribe for more Irish true crime stories, and I'll see you in the next one.